Hugh. Hugh.
So how long has it been since you met Bapu?
It's been 10 years.
In which way would you say Bapu has touched your life?
Oh, he's transformed my life completely. It's a total recreation of my life. I feel like a totally different person than when I met him before. So he's touched every part of my life, from my music playing to my spiritual awareness, which I had none of prior to meeting Bapu, to his teachings have been a huge impact to transform my mind, to clarify, to give me a wisdom basis, to give me a center, to give me a purpose. And musical healing, spiritual healing, psychic healing, literally everything. Astrology, I could speak a lot about that because it's been everything, but I know you have more specific questions. But literally it's like a recreation what Bapu can do for a being.
What was music for you before and after your meeting with Bapu?
Before, it was standard classical training, very to the book, very discipline, and just practice your scales and do as you're told, it was very good for learning technique and to get a job, which of course I'm very grateful to have a symphonic job. I wouldn't have got there without classical training and teachers and music school. So music up to meeting Bapu was just very standard classical training. And then when I met Bapu, his music spoke to a much deeper part of me that I didn't really even know existed. I had never been so touched by music before, especially like a song like Song of Bapuji. The simplicity can just sear into your heart and just open. I had never felt that with classical music before, even though there's a lot of beautiful classical music. It's not the same spiritual healing that I needed from music, which is what I get from Bapu's music. And I've learned to appreciate and to understand and to benefit and heal from his more out music, because it's far more complex than any music I have ever played or known. And it's far more free and creative and purifying. I think that was a huge revelation to me with his music. It really helped to burn away a layer of neurosis within my mind. I remember in the first few years that I was here, the first CD he gave to me was the Free Freedom CD. And I remember just playing it over and over just to, I remember the song No Self, No Thought, No Mind. I mean, it's so intense, but I literally felt like it was peeling away just layers of myself, garbage. That my neurosis was so strong at that point. I just needed that wave of just sound to purify. So I think that's the main difference between the music that I was trained on. It was just to get a job and to play, but his music is for healing. It is much deeper for me.
Why do you feel you are in Bapu's service?
Why did you say?
Yeah,
why?
Or if you do, and
Oh, yeah.
yes, why?
I definitely feel that I'm in Bapu's service because he's helped me so much, more than any being ever. And I feel that it's part of my purpose to help others as Bapu's helped me, and to help Bapu to help others. So to help with getting his books out, to help with anything in order to reach others, because I see what he's done for me. I've seen what he does for others in person. I've seen the transformations. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing even to see what people come in with and how they leave totally different So I feel in service to Bapu forever, and it's not a binding or, it's not a negative connotation. It's just I feel gratitude always, and to serve, I think, is also my highest purpose, is to give back in that way. I think it's the deepest form of service I could give in this life. Yeah.
Is there one or two books in particular that you resonated more deeply with than others?
Yes. Two in particular, because he spoke them both to me. So the first one was No Mind, No Spirit. That one was when I had first just met Bapu, and I was going back to Vancouver to start my job. So he started speaking this teaching to me that I typed out, and we continued over the phone when I left for Vancouver. But that was a huge transformation for me, like a life manual of a book, and him speaking to me on the spot, just creating a teaching that every word just was right to me. I could feel him knowing me so well, more than I knew myself. So that one is very powerful to me. And hearing into no who-ness, that one he also spoke to me. That one was in Maharigpa Hall, and that one was a very big burn. That one was it was. We started by doing them very early in the morning in Maharigpa Hall, and they were very strong meditations that were just cutting, like Master Cutter was the real theme, to just cut through the bullshit, to step up. That was really a huge message, to just really a boot to the ass to get going and to recreate my life. And so that's a very strong book for me as well as Blessed Aloneness. That one, and I Am Silence. I mean, there are so many that speak to me in different ways, but that's all I'll say for now.
And the same questions for songs. You talked about songs about Pucci, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember hearing When I Am Gone. That one, I melt when I hear that one, because it's so powerful emotionally that I feel it very deeply. But Song of Bapuji, yes, I feel that too. Leaving this planet. That's all I can think for now. But yes, they all touch me in different ways, but yeah, they're very deep and heartfelt.
What is it exactly with Bapu that has impacted or healed you?
So many things. With the teachings, the music, the astrology was very important to me. Having a time mastery reading, and that was right when I first got here. He did that for me, a reading, and I'd never had a reading. I didn't know anything about astrology, and then when he gave me a reading, it was far beyond what I knew of astrology in the worldly sense. He was really reading me psychically. I could feel it, and it was from what I had known from astrology in the past, it kind of felt like classical music. I kind of felt like it was just putting me in a box and labeling me and saying, well, that's your destiny. And so it wasn't very, it didn't feel so good or useful. But what Bapu gave me was really a tool to really see my time, but also to see it as an opportunity to work with everything and to not feel anything as a box. He always says, you're not a planet, you're not a sign, but you have these factors to deal with, you have karma to deal with, but it's to transcend, it's to master. And that's always been the hugest thing that has resonated with me from Bapu, is the mastery approach, is that you can master your life. And that was never given to me before. I went to a lot of typical therapy when I was younger to try to sort out depression and anxiety, which I was diagnosed with. But it was, all I was doing was, being medicated and given this same approach as given to everyone, but never being given an approach beyond that. Just saying, well, you're destined to be on medication and you are destined to, kind of be limited. Bapu always burns that and says, you have no limits. So seeing him living as no limits and as living mastery, I think that was the hugest thing when I first met him, was seeing someone who could live enlightenment. That's what I was seeking unconsciously prior to meeting Bapu, is finding someone who was enlightened, but I could never, I hadn't found anyone, so I didn't believe it was possible. So seeing someone who had mastered his life and innumerable life karmas really enabled me to see that that would be possible in my own case. So that was the hugest inspiration, is in meeting him.
Have Bapu's teaching changed or clarified your view of the world?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in particular, river blood karma, seeing that, or the incineration, that was huge for me to read, to see the karmas that are going on between people, because I was always a typical sponge, just a people pleaser, a people person, and not having a center of my own or knowing how to really do anything by myself. So seeing how I was so impacted by other people's karmas, that was a huge revelation that he gave me in person, but also within his teachings like River of Blood and the incineration. Yeah.
Did your daily spiritual practice change your experience at the oboe, playing the oboe?
Yes. In the beginning, when I first met Bapu, he started to help me do a bit of improvising with him at the piano and me on the oboe, and it was so difficult to try to think outside of my classical box, the classical training. And I remember when we were at the piano, he was working with me to break down those barriers, and at a very perfect moment he tuned in, and he said that he could feel or tune into my father's presence, and I just broke down and something came out in my music that I don't know, but that's when I knew that I had played something real for the first time. And I knew Bapu was my real music teacher at that time. Yeah.
Why is aloneness necessary for you?
Because I see that other people's karmas are a lot to take on. I've seen in the past with myself in relations, especially male-female relations. I was so lost in a relationship that I didn't see how lost it, because when you're with someone so close, you can take on their karma and just really lose yourself. And so it's only once I separated myself from that influence that I saw how confused I was. In the midst of confusion, I couldn't see how confused I was. So knowing that about myself, knowing that certain relationships can be very toxic and very devastating, really devastating, actually, psychically especially. I could feel it in my dreams. I just have horrible dreams in the midst of certain relationships. So I see now how sensitive I am, and that in order to be strong, I have to spend time alone. I have to ground myself, and that's the only way I can actually be useful to others, is that if I have a center of my own. Because when I was in the midst of social relationships to the extreme, I was just kind of floating, and I wasn't really of service to anyone. I was just a social sponge, but that doesn't help anyone. It's just being a sponge. And so, and seeing Bapu really in a monastic situation where he's most of the time alone, I see him as my ultimate role model, and how he's helping people like me and you, that is my inspiration. That's what I would like to be, is so centered and so perfect in, helping people in certain critical moments, that if you're in the midst of relations and chaos and in your self-mind, you might miss that, simple thing from a certain person who's in, need, and you're just stuck in your self-mind. But if you're clear, you can, maybe have a word of wisdom that can help them for a moment. So that's why.
Could you consider your life without music?
Without classical music, yes, I could consider that, because there's so much. There's been so much pain, and I mean, it's just like it's very stiff, and it causes a lot of pain in my body too. But I see it as a service, so I've learned to see it as just a job. But I'm also very grateful to have it, because it does allow me that alone time, which I wouldn't have if I was doing many other jobs where you're always around people. And that would be, I think, more difficult in my case, because I am so sensitive. I think I would take on too much and maybe not be able to release as much. And with music, most of the time is alone and practicing and making reeds and preparing. So I could see myself without that music potentially, but I think Bapu's music is the real healing, and I wouldn't want to be without that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hugh. Hugh.
You wrote a book called In Search of True Genius, Finding Tisziji Muñoz. Why and how did that change you, the process of writing this book?
It changed me tremendously. I'd never written a book, let alone thought about writing a book. So it was a huge task, but I knew that it was ultimately for my benefit. I knew it was going to be very purificational, and it was, because it forced me to really think about my life in a very scientific way, and to see exactly how meeting Bapu, who I do consider a true genius, really, in every sense of the word, musically, spiritually, just in his day-to-day life. And that's what I would consider an enlightened being, as a true genius, a master. So for me to document, starting with my early classical music training and early River of Blood experiences, and then documenting how I met Bapu and how various aspects helped me with starting just meeting him, sitting in this hall here, and talking about the astrology readings, and the starting of No Mind, No Spirit that I wrote about in the book, and about his music and the Free Freedom concert, which was done at the school that I went to. Although I didn't hear it in person, I saw it afterwards. Writing the book really helped me it forced me to look at my River of Blood karma, especially to look at, say, like joints, and how especially in the early days of my spiritual practice, I was extremely sensitive to my family members, even over the phone. My knees would just go out when I talked to my grandmother, just not out of anything negative on her part or anyone's part. It's just the resonance we have, because she's obviously aging and has, you know, issues with various parts of her body. To see my resonance with certain people was very illuminating, and also especially illuminating when it was, say, a negative resonance, that I felt like I had, you know, been punched or something, like I felt like I'd been attacked. Even though there was no negative speech involved, I could tell there was undercurrents, and so that really woke me up to the nature of relations and how I didn't want to be done in by even just a phone call. So I became very sensitive, and over the years that is lessened, I think, partly because my family is a bit more sympathetic and resonant in certain ways with what I'm doing, so I don't have the same reactions. But having documented that really helped me, because when I look back at it, sometimes I forget how crazy it was, but it was very crazy. And to have it documented, I think, is very useful for over the years to come back and see, like, wow, it's serious stuff, and especially dealing with relationships, and but also documenting my first experiences with Bapu, like at the piano. I wrote about that, him helping me with playing music, and no mind, no spirit, how the phones would always go out. I'd have to like step on my phone and just throw it across the room, because the interference was so hard between my family karma, not a personal karma, but just I could tell that there's so much resistance in my bloodline to me learning from Bapu, because it's just nothing my family knew anything about. It's just not in we have no shamans or healers in our or in our line that we know of, no talk of spirituality, really. So documenting all of those experiences has been very important, and then documenting the beginnings of my spiritual practice with Bapu, and how those could possibly help other women. I think that's the main goal, is that it's not a book particularly for men, because I'm not a man, but specifically to women. I think it can be very useful, because just knowing that someone can be so sensitive to certain things can be very helpful to just feel like you're not crazy. Karma is real. So anything else?
What would you say was your definition or your understanding of love before you met Bapu, and after, and now what is love to you, or heart, or?
Prior to meeting Bapu, I'd never talked about the word love with anyone. It was just never a topic. It's just, kind of a lofty term that is put out in the world, like I love you, love. But it was just a kind of I knew the outward term of it, like, family love, like just kind of an unconditional support, and, but meeting Bapu, that really opened my eyes to a deeper sense of love that I didn't know. It was a real, really heart to heart. I could feel like he really knew me. Even the first day I got here, I could feel like he knew me better than I knew myself, and that some of his first words, like I remember him saying crier to crier, because I was in such a point where I couldn't even speak. I was so bottled up and so shut down and so unhappy and depressed. But he could feel it, and he could speak for me and express what I couldn't even express. That was such a gift, such a resonance, where I, had been in therapy before and tried to analyze my problems, but I needed someone. For me, I really needed someone to psychically know me, I couldn't do it on my own, and his guidance throughout the years has been a true form of love for me that I had never known before. It's unconditional. He doesn't ask for money or followers. He doesn't want fame. It's just really on a very personal need basis. He doesn't ask for students. He's not looking to take just anyone who calls him. It's very individual, and so my understanding of love has changed in that sense that I see his as very selfless. There's nothing asked in return. It's just outflow. And it's not giving to try to, hold on to you. It's just give to set you free. So that has been very, very purifying and very wonderful, just uplifting. And so certainly not like the sexual kind of love I thought I had in the past, which was just like falling in love, literally, as just going down and, just like a magnetic attraction to someone that's, just very comforting. But it just, in my case, turned into a very kind of confusion and kind of going down process where just losing yourself in the other person, where there's no growth and that's a huge thing, no growth. Whereas with Bapu, it's all about growth. It's love to set you free and to open your mind to give you freedom and wisdom and expression, whereas the so-called love I knew before was just really binding, especially when I tried to leave that relationship. It was like, but you're mine, kind of a thing. Like, what kind of love is that? So when I started to see the negative side of what I used to think was love, then I really woke up to like, wow, just seeing it as a real box, just like you're mine and mine only, and like this is our comfortable version of love. We're just gonna be together, and that's it. And if you want to grow, I don't know, because if I don't want to grow, then oh no. So it's with Bapu, it's just all about growing, and I see it with the other people that come in here too. He just selflessly gives and tunes into them individually. I see it's a very individual process that helps certain people immensely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are a lot of people in the world that don't understand what a teacher is. A lot of people can't get it. And many of these people swear that you don't need a teacher, declaring that a teacher is not real and that you can teach yourself.
Well, before I found Bapu, I was searching. You could probably find me just sitting, living in the bookstore. I was just like searching. So I was looking for answers, and I probably would have ended up, I was going to a yoga studio, and I was, searching for a guide, and I probably would have ended up at a certain kind of a traditional teacher's house eventually if I hadn't found Bapu. But like everything prior to meeting Bapu, I would have like an initial, like, oh, this must be it, for like a day, like I think I can fix myself or something. This person knows. But then I give up on it because I realize it's not true. But when I met Bapu, it was really heart resonance. That I just knew profoundly that was it. He knew me, and that was the greatest resonance I could have with a being, him knowing me so well, heart to heart, and guiding me from within, him knowing me so well. I knew I couldn't do it on my own, and I knew that he was my teacher. And I think that's very important to know who your individual teacher is, because many people meet teachers, and some people meet Bapu and they just don't have that resonance for there to be a gain for the individual. So they might think, oh, well, gurus are, there's no such thing as a guru, they're useless or whatever. But once you meet the one for you, you know that it is real. It is the real deal. And I think that once if you're open enough to it or ready, then that can be possible. But if you're just shut down and say, well, there's no gurus, you might never be open enough to have that fortune to be in resonance with one. But the resonance, the inaudible and invisible resonance with Bapu, with a teacher that really knows me, that's the greatest gift. And it's not even what he says, it's not what he does or anything. It's just sitting in silence, sitting in satsang. You know this is perfect. It's just a true relationship, which is satsang, coming to a point of peace. He can just do that just by his presence. He doesn't have to say anything, but you can sit, if you're in resonance with him, just sitting with him for a moment, just everything is calmed, and you can have that gift that he gives you to come into his resonance. Because usually we're out in the world in our own kind of self mind, and if you come into contact, meeting a teacher that you're in resonance with, all of that can be taken away from you. That garbage can just, even momentarily, just, you have a relief that because you're entering his space, he can give you that gift of healing. Anything else on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh.